breakfast. Listen, you had mayors, you had the football coaches, and when Grant said, "I want you to speak at this thing," I thought it was a joke. I thought he was fucking me. I said, "I'm a zookeeper." He goes, "No, I want you to speak at this thing." Grant, come on. I said, "Okay." I said, "I got to come and speak as a private citizen." Listen, folks, it's no secret what's been going on over the last several months. Actually, for the last several years. I'm here as a private citizen because I was told by supervisors that you're not allowed to speak on this subject. We're talking about the water park Miami Wild. Let me make something very clear. I didn't come to work at the zoo almost 44 years ago to work for an attraction. I came to work for an organization that was going to do something to preserve wildlife, to help conservation, and to keep animals alive in the wild where they belong. This is going to sound a little different from coming from me as someone working in the zoo for almost 44 years. I would never, ever support taking an animal out of the wild and putting it in captivity unless we're saving that individual animal's life or we're saving the species that it represents. And zoos have done that, folks. California condor, Arabian oryx, black-footed bird. These are species that would be gone were it not for zoos. But we've got to be able to decipher the difference between a zoo, a good accredited zoo, and a roadside attraction. When that train wreck of a show, Tiger King, came out, it did more damage to good zoos than anything else. Because people thought that's what zoos are. Idiots who pull babies from their mothers and use them to take pictures. And, it's just exploiting the animal. That's not what I came to work for. And I've always been proud of our zoo. That's what we've done. And we've made some mistakes. Everybody does. When they wanted to build that Walmart next door, 600 plus apartments, LA Fitness, Chipotle, whatever they got, it's this mess. They had to mow down a bunch of pine rocklands. Keep in mind, folks, the pine rockland is the single most critically endangered habitat in all of the state of Florida. Less than 3% of it exists today. And the biggest tract outside of Everglades National Park is right there at Zoo Miami. Now, this water park came up for a vote in 2006. And I voted for it. I was on that phone tree where I was calling people, vote for this. This is a good thing for the park. This is a good thing for the park. 2006 was 17 years ago. What we have learned since then has been incredible information. We've discovered new species. We're discovering new species in that forest almost every year. We've all heard about the bonneted bat, right? Oh, it's a bat. And some people say, come on, it's just a bat, just some butterflies, some bugs, some tiger beetle. Come on. Folks, this is all connected. We're all connected to this. Let me put this in very simple terms. Whether it's the bats that are eating the mosquitoes and eating the bugs that create all kinds of agricultural damage and could cost us millions of dollars every year, whether it's the butterflies that are pollinating the plants that provide us with the food that we eat, the bottom line is this. By protecting these animals, we're protecting ourselves. I'm not some kind of extremist. If there's a roach in my house, I kill it. The roach made a bad decision. He's in my house. He doesn't belong there. Okay? I'm not one of these people, oh no, get the roach out of the No! Extremism in any form is dangerous. We've got to be able to compromise, do something there. So what we've learned since 2006 about the bonneted bat, the tiger beetle, the Bartram's hair streak, the ring-rock snake, the gopher tortoise, these are all animals. There are more than 110 imperiled species that live in that forest. Now the developers will tell you, oh no, we're just developing on a parking lot. We're not going to hurt the forest. Okay? We're on a parking lot, it's pavement. That cannot be critical habitat. That's so wrong. Let me tell you why. During the day, that's a parking lot. At nighttime, that transforms into an incredibly critical foraging area for these animals. This is where they come to feed. So the analogy I want to give to you is that, yes, the developer says, we're not cutting down the trees, we're not hurting the forest. That's okay. You can protect my house. You can make sure nothing happens to me in my house. But if you make it impossible for me to go out and get groceries, to get the food that I need to feed the family that lives in that house, I've got two choices. To live or to move or to die. These animals have nowhere to move to because they already live in the most critically endangered habitat in the entire state. Their only choice is to die. So don't let that narrative of we're just building on a parking lot. It's not just a parking lot. If you go out, understand critical habitat is not just the ground, folks. If you protect a critical part of the ocean, if a part of the ocean said, nope, you cannot fish here, you cannot hunt here, you think it's just protecting the ocean floor? No, habitat is the column of life all the way up. Those animals are not only using that area, that parking lot to feed, they're also using it as a conduit to get from one part of the endangered forest to the other, crossing the area. And one of the things that really burns my cork, and I'm going to say this without any filter, when I see a parks director get in front of the commission and tell them there's lights in the parking lot, the parking lot's lit, because then Commissioner Cava asked a specific question, and this is all on tape. She asked, I'm concerned about light because light pollution has a very detrimental effect on wildlife at night. So of course they want to build a water park, they're going to build some lights. So Commissioner Cava then asked, well, I'm concerned about the lights, and the parks director said on tape, oh no, we have lots of lights in the parking lot. I don't know what flipping parking lot she was looking at. We've never had lights in the parking lot. On occasion, we have a special event. We bring lights in on trucks. When the event's over, we move it out. That's misinformation that was given to the commission that enabled them to write this lease. Okay? And I want to make it clear, too, I've got nothing personal against Miami Wilds or the people of Miami Wilds. I understand they're trying to make a living. But the only horse I've got in this race is just doing the right thing, folks. I was up on the 29th floor one day with key people, and I told them, before I wrote the infamous letter, that Grant, I cannot thank you enough for having the guts to publish that thing. I'm not changing one word in my letter. He published that thing, which was like freaking War and Peace. He published the whole thing. And I firmly I'm telling you, from my heart, I believe this. I said, this is not going to make a difference. But this was only for my own self-respect. Because I remained quiet with that whole boondoggle of Walmart and all that stuff. And they said, oh no, we got these HCAs, habitat conservation plans, HCPs, and we're going to do the right life. They've already violated half of that stuff and nobody's held them accountable. Let me tell you something. We put bat boxes, and I cannot tell you. The reason why I finally went off on this is when a developer started discrediting my peers. When I was hired by the original director at the zoo, he told me something that at the time I said to myself, gosh, I can't believe this guy's telling me this. This seems to be so contradictory. He said, pal, I understand, the first director was a little rough around the edges, but he had the mouth of a sailor, F-bombs left and right. He never survived it, but he was the greatest leader because I knew he had my back. And he would tell me something. He said, remember this, pal, the people below you are much more important than the people above you. And I remember listening going, well, Mr. Yokel, you're my director. And he goes, that's right. If I see you paying more attention to me than I see you paying attention to the people below you, I know you're never going to be a good leader. And I really stuck in my head. I mean, this guy, and this is something I say with all due respect again, too. I told my director right to his face. And I've got this all on tape, so I've got it all verified. I said, listen, with all due respect, I report to you, you report to the parks director reports to the mayor. I don't work for any of you. I work for the people of Dade County. Their taxes pay my salary. That's who I work for. So I feel a moral obligation to stand up for certain things. So when I'm being told, you're not allowed to speak on this, and my conservation research scientists who did all the work to establish the incredible wildlife that lives around there, all the things that we learned since 2006, are told they are not being allowed to speak on this? Hell no. I'll come out, and that's what I said. I have to be a part of treason. And that's the other thing that was so hilarious. So I've come out, I'm all over the place doing this stuff, and we brought awareness, because you know what, folks? I'm not doing this work. It's the people from Bat Conservation International, from the Center for all these scientists, all these researchers put their blood, sweat, and tears to get this information and protect this wildlife. But you know what? They're not a public figure. I carry a huge chip on my shoulder because I get so much credit that I don't deserve. And I'll tell you why. We live in a very shallow society, folks. People see you on television, they hear you on the radio, and they think you're important. More often than not, you're not important because you're on TV or on the radio. It's the people who make you look good that are important. The writers, the producers, the cameramen, all these people, the people that are doing all the work, they're the ones who make you look important. And I learned this from really incredible people. I mean, Bob Mayer was one of the first anchors I worked with on television. And I learned just by watching him from example of what being a good storyteller is, connecting with people, getting to care. How much time do I have here? You know, there are people here, Joe Hartzinski, I mean, one of the greatest cameramen ever. You see some of the great stories that you've ever seen, and you never see Joe's face. People don't know Joe. But Joe's the guy who put that stuff together. And that's when I started learning, man, these are the people that deserve all the credit. So I feel terribly guilty when people come up and, oh my God, you do such a great job at the zoo. I don't do anything at the zoo now except to talk about the people that are doing all the work at the zoo. And when the developer started saying, oh, their science is junk science, those numbers are outlandish, that's laughable. Oh yeah? Now I'm done with you, okay? Now I'm done with you. You're never going to bad talk my peers because you hire some consultant that gives you numbers that fit your narrative. Let me tell you how that worked. Nothing against Johnson Engineering, big consultant that people pay for. But they went out, and I'm just going to give you the story on the bats. And this is not just about bats, it's about all these animals. But just on the bats, the narrative is going to say, you've heard the developer come on television where he said, well, you know, our recordings only recorded this many bats, you know, it wasn't, you know, because they made over 380,000 recordings. They threw out over 300,000 of them because they said, no, there was some noise in there. What they did was they used software that immediately eliminated any call that wasn't totally clean. So if they had sounds of like crickets or birds or whatever in the back, no good, threw it out. Fish and Wildlife says all those calls need to be individually analyzed. That's their recommendation. They didn't do that. So they threw out over 80% of all their calls. But even with the less than 20% that they had, the numbers that they submitted still classified as high activity of these bats in the lot by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. You didn't hear them say that. You didn't hear them say, oh, it's still high activity. No, you heard them. So our numbers are like just 5% of what the scientists were reporting, which are laughable numbers. No, you know why? Because the scientists took all the calls and individually examined those calls. I'll give you an analogy. You can have a red light camera and a car speeds through, right? Test a picture. And the plate's blurry. You then run it through additional software and you sharpen it up and there's the plate. There's software to take those calls that you could run through, take out the noise and say, oh, there's the bat. But they didn't do that. You just threw it out. So this is very misleading. It's very misleading. And I'm not just going to get on the environmental thing, folks. The traffic, the development is just ridiculous. If you look at Coral Reef Drive now, what it has turned into is a nightmare. I get to work every morning at night at 6:30 in the morning. Because if I wait a half hour earlier, it takes me a half hour longer to get there. Ask the people in that community, do they really want a water park there? If you want a water park, we've got 3 water slides at Larry and Penny Thompson Park, right next door to the zoo, that have been broken and unrepaired for 3 years. If everybody wants a water park, why haven't they fixed that slides at Larry and Penny Thompson Park? Yeah. How many water parks have been built and failed in South Florida? Think about that. This is a boondoggle, guys. This is Jungle Island. With all due respect to Jungle Island, I know you guys are here. But when it started, moving to Pinecrest out there, the whole thing was we're going to have all these people coming. It's going to be right by the port of Miami. We're going to have all this attendance. It's so easy to make projections, okay? In my entire 44-year career at the zoo, not once has any project I've ever been a part of or associated with ever met original projections, ever met original budget. Yet every time we open those things, somebody gets up and goes, we're so proud that this is on time and on budget. I go, what timeline and what budget are you talking about? Let's start getting real, folks. Let's start being honest. I've learned through this whole process because when I wrote that letter, I thought for sure, listen, it's not going to make a difference. But I had to do it for my own self-respect. Because at the end of the day, I built my career on credibility and with people thinking, okay, he's our wildlife guy. He's going to stand up for wildlife. And if I didn't do that, I'd be a hypocrite. I'd be a hypocrite. And then all of a sudden the spouts open up, people start coming out of the woodwork. I'm going, they do care. They were just waiting for somebody to make them aware. I can't tell you how many times people came up to me and goes, I had no idea about this. I had no idea. And that's what really burned me. I'm thinking, gosh, we just had to make them aware. Every single day I have someone come up to me, put their hand on my shoulder and say, thank you for doing that. Thank you for fighting for this. Now once have I had one person come up to me and go, you know, man, I really wanted that water park. What's the problem with the water park? Not once. Now maybe I could be a little intimidating and they don't want to tell me that because they think I want to kill them, but I'm not that way. I'm not that way. Guys, we can build and tear down a water park almost anywhere. And I know, for instance, the city of Homestead has come out to the developers and said, we want it here. We got land that's not environmentally sensitive. And keep that in mind. When people voted for this in 2006, there was a clause that said, as long as the land is not environmentally sensitive. Oh my God, if that land is not environmentally sensitive, what is? What is? I'm proud of the Zoo Miami Foundation that unanimously as a board came out and said, we are against this. That's who we stand for, as a conservation organization. And on the flip note, as much as it hurts me to say this, I am profoundly disappointed in the Parks Department and our own zoo that hasn't officially come out and said, we are against this. The mayor has come out and said she's against this. And yet I've not heard the Parks Department or the zoo come out and say, we're officially against this. Because everybody's tiptoeing. Everybody's afraid. Let me tell you something, folks. One of the greatest empowers of authority is silence. It is silence. We all need to understand that when the people lead, the leaders will follow. We have got to get together and believe in this. I'm not against development. I understand the need to grow. Just not in the most critically endangered habitat in our entire state. And don't give me that spiel, it's just a parking lot. It is not just a parking lot. Those are people who don't know about wildlife, don't know the connectivity that's necessary for wildlife. So I'm up here, I was willing and still am willing to lose my job over this because I'd rather leave that place with my head held high than to sit there and think, what a hypocrite you are. People looking to you to defend something that has no price tag, because if we lose that, all the money in the world is not going to bring it back. Okay? We've got to. I can't say this strongly enough. I'm tired of the bureaucracy. I'm tired of it. I owe 44 years. And on that note, I also want to commend the mayor. I want to commend Jimmy Morales. You know why? Because when I was at that September 19th initial meeting for the vote, sitting in the front row, which I'll be in the front row tomorrow too, because I'll be there before sunrise. The mayor came walking over to me and I'm thinking, oh God, here it comes. Yeah, here it comes. She says, can I come speak to you in my office? I go, here we go, I'm ready, let's go. We pull over to the side, she sat down, she says, I want you to know I'm proud of you. And I still get emotional thinking about that because it was totally not what I expected. She said, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for believing and standing up for what you're doing. Jimmy Morales came up to me, shook my hand, put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, keep up good work. I needed to hear that more than you could ever know. Because I was not hearing that from my direct supervisors. I still haven't heard that from my direct supervisors. So until we start calling this kind of stuff out, it enables it to continue. We've got to stand up for what we believe in, folks. I dedicated my life to conservation, but having said that, if I'm in the middle of the African bush with my wife and my children, and the very last rhino in the world is standing in front of me, pregnant with the future of the species, but the only way I know to feed my wife and my kids is to kill the rhino's going to die. Because my wife and my kids aren't going hungry for any animal. There is no single animal that's more important than a human. And until we understand that in conservation, we're never going to be able to protect this stuff. The water park is not a necessity. It's a want. It's not a need. It could be built other places. The Miccosukee called me up. The vice chairman of the tribe said, hey, can you even didn't have a developer. We want him out here. We want to do a resort with the water park. I gave it to him. The water park people said, no, we want to be here at the zoo. We want to, why? They said, oh, we're going to bring better attendance to the zoo, more attendance to the zoo. Really? How many of you have ever gone to a water park with your family? Got out of the water park and said, hey, you know what? Now let's go to the zoo. Come on, guys, really? Let's use common sense. Plus, you're going to now use $9 a car to park for both the zoo, for everybody to park. Right now it's free. Now, I don't want to mislead you. Eventually, they're going to have to charge for parking. Okay? But at least you know all that money is going to go to the zoo. You have to split it up with other people. Another thing that was never brought up, and I'm almost done here. 8:30, right? This is when I'm supposed to be done. Okay. Another thing. This has never been brought up. So I'm going to bring it up to you now. Water parks. What do you do to keep that water clean all the time? When you go to a pool, when you go to any kind of public pool, what's one of the first things you smell?
Chlorine.
Chlorine. Chlorine gas is heavier than air. Chlorine gas will linger above the water. A breeze will blow that chlorine gas right into the forest. Chlorine gas, at those levels, we as humans can tolerate it. It is toxic to so many invertebrates, so much plant life. Why do you think around places like Venetian Pool, you can only plant certain kinds of plants? How many of you try to plant a lot of stuff around your pool at home? Only certain plants will survive, the ones that are tolerant to the toxin of chlorine. Okay? Chlorine will wipe out so much of those very fragile, delicate species. Nobody's ever talked about that. Why not? It's important. To maintain the forest, we have to have regular burns. As it is now, we do the burns only when the smoke can blow into the parking lot. Because otherwise it blows into Coast Guard housing, blows into the zoo. They're locked in. If they build a water park there, now we can't do the burns at all. How are we going to maintain the forest? Oh, we got a budget to maintain the forest. The forest is in bad shape. The forest is in getting better shape every day because of our staff. It has been working hard. Our conservation department has been working so hard to maintain that. We've made such strides. When they first discovered those bats, there were like 14 of them. Now there are over 100 of them. And for those who say, well, you know, they mitigate. Well, we put bat boxes in the parking lot where the Walmart is, right? They say, oh, we got, the lights don't affect anything. And then we put bat boxes in our parking lot at the zoo where we have no lights. The bat boxes in the zoo parking lot are full of bats. They inhabited them right away. How many bats do you think are in the bat boxes in the parking lot of Walmart and all those areas? Guess 0. Is this rocket science? It's not. Stop it. Stop falling for the narrative. Environment is not for sale. Our quality of life is not for sale. Now, I will say this. I've met with all the commissioners except for 4. 4 who never even acknowledged my multiple requests to meet with them. I'm not going to mention any names, but trust me, after this vote tomorrow, I will not let them forget that they didn't even acknowledge. We work for you. We're the commissioners. It's political bullshit. Okay? But I must say to all the other commissioners, I was very pleasantly surprised. Several individuals in particular, again, I'm not mentioning any names. But I went into those meetings with their first saying, no, this is a good thing. It's all about the economic development, bringing it to South Dade. Let me tell you something else. We're bringing all these jobs to South Dade.